I'm about to chat to Pippa Murray, the founder of Pip and Nut. She's a wonderful woman. I've had her on my stage at Conversations of Inspiration, where she spoke so eloquently about her B Corp journey. And I've also had her on Conversations of Inspiration, my podcast, where we spoke about the beginning, the kitchen table part of her story, all the way up to getting into the supermarkets. And she's so honest and open, and I'm sure she will be now, about what it means to stock supermarkets, how you grow a team, how you are a startup, what is innovation in the food industry. And I know every single time that I come away from her, I just think what a remarkable businesswoman. And I know you're going to think that too.
Hi, my name is Pip and I'm the founder of Pip and Nut, an all-natural nut butter brand. And I'm speaking to Holly all about our experiences as a business since Corona hit, and a little bit of insight into what the retail landscape looks like for us. Enjoy.
Hi!
How are you?
I'm good. So before we start with how everything is in your business, tell me how you are personally and how you're feeling personally going through all of this.
I mean, it's strange, isn't it? Because I think it's gone through different waves. I think the initial first sort of 4 weeks, I think was just kind of running on adrenaline. I think like a lot of people, and a lot of anxiety, I think, around how the world was changing, and the news was and continues to be, I think, something that I find quite difficult to watch at the moment. But I think over the weeks, I've started to get into more of a rhythm of I guess what this, I hate the phrase new normal is, but I get into a rhythm, and I guess as a business we're starting to sort of settle in a bit more. And I think that context, amongst also an environment where your business is also being impacted in different ways, is quite difficult, I think, at times to deal with.
It's so worth, before we chat about it, it's so worth just saying, like when you just said that, it really just hit me, actually, because you're right. You know, as women, as founders of businesses, with all that pressure and weight on our shoulders for not just ourselves, but our tireless hard work up until this point. Do you know what I mean? Our teams, the future, everything riding on that. And that's before you even look outside your window and understand that there is a pandemic going on, and that, you know, you're also going through what everyone is going through, you know, but you have that entire business founder pressure, isn't it? It's very, very unique, because I liken it a lot to having children. It's a sense of responsibility. You've brought up these beings, and so the pressure you must feel is on you to somehow, when no one knows what the answer is, to sort of work out what the answer is.
Yeah, and I think when you run a startup, you do get used to that sense of like things change and you have to pivot, but it doesn't stop it from being uncomfortable when you can't feel like you're in control of a scenario, thing which frankly nobody can predict. And I think it's that uncomfortability that you have to sit with, which I think you do get used to when you're in a startup, but it doesn't in an environment like this, which is so changing and so uncertain. It can, you know, that's when you get your sleepless nights, isn't it? Your AM wake up calls. So yeah, it creeps into your psyche, I think.
Tell me how business has been and how it's impacted your business and your team.
Yeah, so I guess in lots of ways Pip and Nut's been quite fortunate. So sort of nut butter is quite a staple. It's something that a lot of people have in their kitchen cupboards. And I guess with more people eating at home than they've ever done before, and I guess particularly in the early stages when people were buying and sort of panic buying, we did see just a astronomical spike in sales. One that came out the blue. So it's just the speed at which these things, it suddenly changed. So I guess in our business we sell into all the supermarkets, and then we also have customers like, you know, high street customers like Boots and Holland and Barrett, and then we've got kind of smaller independent stores as well as online. And supermarkets has been a difficult one to keep up with.
Go on, tell me about that, because that was going to be my next question. But just what's I've not spoken to someone yet in the food industry. I mean, I've spoken to, the founder of the Pig Hotel who has restaurants, but not someone like yourself. So tell me what that relationship has, or has it changed with the supermarkets? Like, what's been the impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think particularly with our business and our kind of the way we work is that often we will be focusing a lot on kind of new business opportunities. We'll be talking to our buyers about, exciting new products or new listings that we want to achieve. Whereas I guess now it's just been a focus. The number one goal is about getting product into stores as best you possibly can. So, if you're talking to your buyer, the first thing they'll ask is like, how's your service level been? Like, have you been able to meet the demand? And that's like the number one thing they care about. And so that becomes your goal. So rather than being a kind of real sales-led business, suddenly we're all about, the number one focus is on, can we make our supply chain run during a really unstable period of time? And if we can meet that demand, then you can keep your buyers happy.
It's about whether you are a good bet, whether your supply chain, the way that you create your nut butters and being able to get stock of that in is working. And so that's what they're now looking for, people who are good bets in a sense.
Yeah, exactly, and can be reliable when they are experiencing huge demand. And I guess it's so different across every single category. So our product, which sits in kind of a store cupboard staple, has seen about 40% year-on-year growth, which is massive. For normally in supermarkets, you're talking single-digit growth if you're lucky.
Right.
So growth in this period of time. So it's a great place to be in, and I'm not complaining because it's been good. But it does mean it puts a lot of pressure on your team to deliver, particularly the operations team. And then, we work with manufacturers who we outsource our production to, and they're in, a pressurized environment where either their staff can't come to work and you don't have operators on the line to the product, to, struggling to get, they've got increased demand across all their customers. And so you're having to kind of almost negotiate your way to get your product in your hands. And I guess for us, we know we're in a bit of a bubble, and we know that bubble will probably burst at some point.
Right now you've got massive sales, etc., but if it does go down, is it not just does it not just take the pressure off everything when the sales come down, or is there actually more commitment that you need to make up now that potentially doesn't really work with the planned growth you had for your company?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because I guess there are a few things that play into it. So obviously, like I said, we every year will be going after new bits of business, and that might be getting 3 additional products into Sainsbury's as an example. But retailers have stopped all new business conversations. You're kind of losing out on, whilst you're seeing growth now, you're kind of losing out on all
innovation
and innovation that you might land in store. So you kind of almost instantly have to strike out those lines of the budget that you were hoping to achieve this year.
I actually do now believe that, your customers who have started to love your brand because of you, Pippa, because of everything you've put into it, and because of the premium nature and the goodness of your product, and the fact that I don't know if you've yet got the B Corp, your B Corp, yes, of course you are. I got the squirrel and everything, but is the fact that now people are going to vote with their precious pounds. I said, people are still going to vote with their money. And I really do believe that it's a very different recession than last time. We're more awake, I would say, at the wheel of this one.
Yeah, and I think what's been really heartening is the sense of community that you do feel. I'm in sort of North London, and I actively shop at the moment in my local wine shop, my local, little veg shop round the corner, rather than going to Tesco, if I can do, because actually I want to see those businesses survive. I, as do most business owners, know how hard those small companies and small businesses are working to keep their lights on. But I think until I get a bit more feeling what the environment's like, I kind of want to sit and hold tight and pull the purse strings in myself and sort of wait and see. But I think there's, in lots of ways, so much opportunity for small brands. We've seen huge growth on our direct-to-consumer model, and something that used to be a tiny bit of revenue for us, whereas now it's grown by about 1,000% over the last
So
year.
that's, and again, for the sort of, you know, the sort of non-business chat, that is basically customers coming to your site, not going to Sainsbury's or anywhere else, and actually just wanting to buy nut butter from you directly. And you were saying, like, basically before, that wasn't your focus, and now has grown 1,000%. And isn't that a great example, Pippa, of this, the fact that these opportunities are happening? When would you have ever really prioritized that potentially?
Absolutely. No, I actually, it's given us the kind of onus to actually go after it a bit harder. And actually, what I love about that is it's the one channel that we as a brand can totally curate and make experience as you possibly can do. And actually, you know, nut butter is probably not something that you traditionally think that I'll get through the post. It's not an essential, but you can still make that experience amazing. You know, you can add extra detail. You can make, you know, every email that you get from Pip and Nut a really great experience. So as a brand owner, I actually love it because you can really pay attention to like customer
the detail,
which I think when you're selling into a large retailer, you're kind of lost once it gets onto their shelves. It's then your product is the only thing you can control. Everything else is them. Right,
couple of questions. Actually, couple of questions from the same company, London Bruncher. How did you scale up from market to supermarket?
Yeah, I mean, so firstly, I think if anyone is doing that scale up phase from kitchen table or market to supermarket, like, it's a really hard job and it will take time, but don't be hard on yourself if it does take a long time, because it's a tricky one. But I think the main thing is about looking at how you're going to make your product at scale that is both delivering on the absolute best quality it possibly can be, whilst also, and unfortunately, bringing in price into it at the best possible price so that it can work all down the value chain within the retailers. When it comes to retailers, I think it's all about starting and building up slowly. Don't go after everyone at once. We started in Selfridges, and then we went to Whole Foods, and we kind of built up the chain so that you can learn your mistakes as you go. And then when you do get to some of the big boys, you kind of figured out, okay, I know how to, you know, I know how my warehousing works. I know how to get the product onto the shelf. Figured all that stuff out before you go and deal with some kind of quite big customers. So I think be really kind of sustainable in how you go about doing it.
And I wanted to just mention that we're going to be at home a lot more, potentially, like our mindset, and basically everything coming to you. So this is going to be the end of anyone not being online. Like, there isn't a choice in that. What about you and that feeling that you've now dipped your toe into this wonderful 1,000% growth?
Yeah, and we're looking into sort of subscription model and how we can make that kind of work within our business. But I mean, I think it's such a big opportunity, and like I said, it's all about how do you make that shopping experience better than what it would be if you were going through a retailer or a normal traditional retailer. And that's everything from, you know, if you are using paid advertising, how do you make that paid advertising both something that's useful to in terms of selling, but also great content? How do you support your community through interesting newsletters that give them, I don't know, exciting recipe inspiration? And it's just thinking about every single touch point. And I think in that sense, like I said, when you're a small business owner and you care about every tiny detail, I do think you can win there, because you'll be so fanatical about making sure the customer is part of it. And actually, it doesn't, in terms of barrier to entry, if you're a new brand coming onto the scene, it's a much lower barrier to entry in some ways than having to scale up to supply 1,000 Tesco stores.
Yes.
But in some ways, I actually think for small brands, there's this kind of bit of a moment in time where you've kind of got an audience that is willing to buy online, and you can build and grow and not have to invest thousands and thousands of pounds in stock that is, do you know what I mean?
Yes. I've got another question for you. Have you, you've been donating a jar to a food bank, haven't you, when your customers donate one? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, this was just an idea that I had right at the start of the sort of COVID-19. We've always we've done various different kind of volunteering with Hackney Food Bank, which is a local food bank to us, as well as donating product to as well. And I think I read something about how food banks are particularly under pressure at the moment, because not only are they having reduced kind of support in terms of products being given to them, but also just massive demand. I think it felt like something that we could tangibly and meaningfully support. So yeah, we put on our website a donation scheme which allows people to donate on our website, and then every donation of a jar will match it, and then we'll arrange for all those products to go to a local bank. And yeah, we've had over, I think, nearly 3,000 donations so far.
No way! My gosh, that's amazing.
So yeah, it's been a lovely initiative, and actually we're going to keep running it. And actually I think we're going to keep it as a permanent feature. It feels like yeah, something that we should do as a business.
I just think, well, look at the take up. I mean, that's just been amazing. And just one of my questions to you, we're right now in the throes of working out how Holly & Co will not change, you know, because I've been trying to make sure that everyone understands that you can't be the same company as you were. And so if that is the case, what changes are you going to make? And I couldn't then just go back to being the same. Tell me about yourself, because how has this remote working worked for you and the office?
I think this has been transformational for it. I think I mean, the ease at which we adapted, I actually found astonishing. I think the only thing I found, particularly in the last sort of 2 weeks, is the fatigue that comes with it. I think that it has been eye-opening to see like the ease of which you can work remotely, and the kind of quality of time that you get around work is so much better if you are strict on yourself about stopping and starting at reasonable times. So I think for me, I mean, for instance, I've always had a bit of a dream to move to Cornwall, and it's made me think, could I actually do that? Could I split my time? And likewise, if people in my team had a similar aspiration, or would that be something that people would want? So, but I do think, you know, we have, for instance, this afternoon, every Wednesday afternoon in our business, we have Zoom free, we use Zoom, Zoom free afternoons, because we noticed really quickly just how exhausted people were by the end of the week. And I think that came from being on back-to-back video conferencing. We try and now give some space for people to do quiet time, to not be online, because I do think that's the only downside to this remote working, is that, well, there's a couple, like the fact that you're kind of constantly facing screens, but also you do lack that kind of chat by the water cooler or when you're making a cup of tea, and I really miss that sociable aspect. So I don't think it's about removing it completely, but I do think a lot of work can be done remotely, and you can be really efficient if you set it up correctly.
I just want to say, just two things. One was, in your advice for small businesses going through this, do you have any key things that you've thought about that you want to pass on? Is there anything that you've learned that you would want to pass on?
Yeah, I think one thing that I found really interesting over the past sort of 2 months was that my decision making's completely changed. I don't know if this is similar with you, but I feel like I'm being more decisive and more clear-minded about what we should be working on and what we should drop. And I think sometimes when you're because it's been in a bit more of a crisis mode, you know, you feel like you need to be much clearer with your communication, much more regular communication to people, and I think actually in some ways it's built my confidence up a little bit more than I think it has built my confidence up, because I've had to be more sort of assertive and kind of decisive, which sometimes I can struggle with. And I guess my second point kind of linked to that is just how you communicate with your team, how often, because I think sometimes I could probably be a bit, not lazy, but maybe not as thoughtful about how I'm kind of, you know, sharing information throughout the business. Whereas when you're working remotely, you have to be much more conscious about, well, how do I make sure that I know that the whole team understand our strategy for the next 3 months? How do I check in that people aren't, you know, struggling mentally? Like, how do we do this? And I think that's been quite a positive thing. I think there's a lot of self-reflection.
Bless you. Thank you for sharing all you've shared, and for being, I knew you'd be so honest and open with everyone, and you have again, and it's just so lovely to see your face and to see Cornwall behind you, and I'm going to be on at you I can't wait to hear what happens, but the community's loved it, and thank you so much for your time.
No, absolute pleasure. been so nice to see you, Holly.
Oh, she's such a lovely, lovely woman. And you know what? That's one of the things that's coming out of this, is that you're seeing and you're witnessing people that you admire who are building brands, and you're seeing the human side of them. I just want to summarize what Pippa said. We're used to pivoting as a startup, heartening the sense of community right now. There's this heightened responsibility that we have as a global community. Do we feel more connected at the moment? And I would say that we do. So much opportunities for a brand. You know, she might have taken that line out of the spreadsheet, but did she put in the 1000% growth of direct customers coming to her website? So, you know, you have to look at your businesses and say, okay, well, that's not going to work, but what little things are growing? You always use the analogy of planting seeds and watching what grows, and then taking the sprouts that have grown and cultivating those in another field, and then just ignoring the ones who are goddamn not growing at all. And transformational business, remote working, Zoom-free afternoons, because everyone is exhausted, this new way of working. And community is so, so important. And how you communicate right now, how you communicate with your teams right now, how you communicate with each other, your family. There is no rule book at the moment. So you can set those rules, because you're inspirational, incredible business founders, dreamers right now. As ever, thank you so much, NatWest, Dell, 3 and Royal Mail, for letting me to speak to people like Pippa, for us being able to talk about different industries and getting light bulbs going off from different founders and tips, and we're hopefully putting them all in our melting pot, and it's only doing good for our business. Not like the glass of wine that I might have later, more like the vitamins I had earlier. Sending you all my love, and thank you again, Pippa, for your time.